The H1B Guy here, and today, the H1B Guy news for the week ending October 30th, 2020. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. It helps me to produce more content like this for you. I also wanted to mention the H1B Guy offers a variety of consulting services. If I can help provide you peace of mind by bridging the gap between your employer and your immigration attorney, please reach out. I'd love to hear how I can help you. I also wanted to thank everyone again for taking the time to join me yesterday for the H1B Guy Live, unedited, unscripted Q&A 6 for our 75th post here on YouTube yesterday. And now, the news. There was a lot of news this week, starting with Monday being the last day for comment on the Federal Register on their notice establishing a fixed time period of admission and an extension of stay procedure for non-immigrant academic students, exchange visitors, and representatives of foreign information media. We discussed this here on this channel during the H1B Guy comments. DHS moves to fixed time period and new extension of stay policy. Check that out. That video was released on Monday. Late last Wednesday, it was announced in a news release that DHS, Trump administration, protect American jobs from unfair international competition, which we covered yesterday during the H1B Guy Live. Then, on Thursday morning, the November Visa Bulletin was released, which I covered yesterday during the H1B Guy Live as well. But just a quick recap of rapid forward movement and what that means to the Department of State. Final action dates for EB2 China moved up 6 weeks. For EB3 China, it moved up 3 months. For EB2 India, it moved up 21 days. And for EB3 India, it moved up 6 weeks. Filing dates, there was no movement. In what was another highly anticipated visa bulletin that produced yet again very disappointing results. EB3 China final action moved 3 months, and that was the largest forward movement of the EB categories we monitor here on this channel. October 27th, 2020, in an article written by Jimin Kang for The Nation titled "International Students Don't Want to Study in the U.S. Anymore." Quote, as some predict, a drop in international student enrollment due to the aftershocks of the pandemic, a looming uncertainty hovers over the country's educational institutions. Despite all their outreach to foreign students, and what if these students no longer come? And if they don't, what will American campuses look like in the future? International students' economic impact is a convincing argument to make in favor of letting them stay, according to a report by the Association of International Educators. These students contributed $41 billion to the U.S. economy in 2018. It's a sum that, during a time of economic crisis, the country can't lose to afford. Still, it's a narrative that unfairly reduces international students to potential profit. Many international students do pay full tuition, which is often higher for non-resident and out-of-state students. Yet, this population also includes those who receive substantial grants from their home governments or work multiple campus jobs to support their life overseas. Some even receive full financial aid, most often at wealthier private institutions, such as Harvard and Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the 2 schools that sued the government over the now rescinded ICE policy from July. The case was resolved before it was even discussed in court. But as the 2020 election approaches, accompanied by a growing wave of changes in immigration policy, the nation's international students, many of whom are now unsure where to go next, have much greater anxieties in mind. In light of the emotional and human cost of this uncertainty, the economics and numbers of the narrative seem beside the point. Did I read that correctly? 41 billion with a capital B to the U.S. economy in 2018. While it is unfair to label international students as potential profit, we do have to recognize their value for what it is: U.S. educated human capital. Let's set aside their per dollar value as students and think about how this is going to have an impact to the bigger picture. The cost impact in the long game is huge. We will see less technological advancements, innovation, and fewer educated U.S. graduates. And we will continue losing ground to our opponents to the north, south, east, and west. October 29th, 2020. In an article written by Ron Hyra for Inc. titled Biden and Trump Recognize the Flaws in Immigration, but That's All They Agree On. Quote, parsing where President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden stand on employment-based immigration, particularly as it relates to small businesses and startups, is difficult since neither has a complete and cohesive policy. In sum, they actually agree on the substance of reforms, but they differ in the mechanisms for making the changes. And for small businesses and startups, the devil is in the details. The Trump administration recently acted to fix several key flaws in the system. The new rules should substantially improve the quality of H-1B workers as employers who are using the visa primarily because of cheap wage and indentured features pull back. Biden has expressed interest in reforming the H-1B visa program. Which direction the Biden administration goes depends on who is named to the key cabinet positions like the Secretary of Labor. The adage that personnel are policy is appropriate here. Rumors are that Sanders, a longtime champion of substantive reform to the H-1B rules, is vying for that specific post. H-1B reform is a significant but small piece within the larger puzzle of comprehensive immigration reform that has vexed politicians from both parties for more than a generation. The choice of using regulations rather than legislation to make H-1B fixes will be weighed against the larger aims. If Biden wins and the Democrats take back the Senate, their margin will almost certainly fall short of a majority that can overcome a filibuster. The last time Congress attempted comprehensive immigration reform was in 2013. Biden, should he win, will face serious pressure from tech and financial services sectors to keep the flawed H-1B rules in place, and he'll have a difficult time pushing for comprehensive immigration reform without their full-throated support. I've talked about the differing policies on immigration between President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden a good bit over the last few months. I wanted to cover this article from Ron Hyra, a professor from Howard University, who's been very vocal recently on Twitter against the H-1B visa. He supported the extensive executive reform that's been recently announced. But he makes several valid points in this article that I wanted to discuss. Both candidates will prove to be tough on small business and tech startups, some of the foundations for which our U.S. economy runs. Alluding to a potential Biden victory and mentioning the possibility of Senator Bernie Sanders being named Secretary of Labor, I'm not sure whether to be extremely scared or very excited for this. Senator Sanders has long championed H-1B reform. While hailing from Vermont, which is home to one of the largest USCIS processing centers in the country, Senator Sanders has some very extreme views as it relates to the labor force. It will be very interesting to see if this prediction comes true if Biden were to win. It's apparent that our governing branches prefer to reform immigration legislation via executive action versus acts of Congress. The recent actions of the president and Congress further prove this point. Here's hoping we see changes to this philosophy heading into the 2021 session. Although right now, it feels like a blip on the map. For the full post, please check out the H1BGuy.com. And if you haven't already, I'd like to ask you to please like this video, please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we post a new video here to this channel. If you've made it this far, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch my content. I really appreciate your support. I also wanted to give a special shout out to VR who helped produce the news here today. Thank you, VR. I really appreciate your support. The H1B Guy, your global source for all things H1B.